Joining Butkus, defensive end Doug Atkins, 6'8", 257 pounds, played 17 seasons at defensive end and helped lead the Bears to an NFL championship in 1963. Those are two fearsome defenders, Coach.
You know, Doug Atkins played defensive right end, and his length at 6'8" was a lot in those days. It's a lot now, but he's especially big in those days, and he was very athletic. Guys would try to cut block him, and he just kind of stepped over them. It wasn't any problem at all. He was a very good pass rusher, had excellent speed in pursuit.
Buck Buchanan, Kansas City Chiefs defensive tackle, missed only one game in 13 seasons with the Chiefs. He was named to the AFL All-Time Team and helped lead Kansas City to a win in Super Bowl IV. We're about to add three dominant defenders from the 80s and 90s, starting with defensive tackle John Randall, undrafted out of Texas A&M Kingsville. Randall played 14 seasons in the NFL and amassed 137.5 sacks.
That is a butt kicking right there. We're talking about a little guy just annihilating a big man.
You can't handle me, boy!
Of course, this team would not be complete without the NFL's all-time sack leader, defensive end Bruce Smith. The first overall pick of the '85 draft, he was the NFL's Defensive Player of the Year in 1990 and then 1996. On the all-decade teams of the 80s and 90s, he led Buffalo to 4 Super Bowl appearances.
And they're again, and they sack him! They sack him at the 10-yard line!
Oh, baby! Oh, baby! Woo!
And last but certainly not least, the Minister of Defense, Reggie White. He earned 13 straight trips to the Pro Bowl and was voted the NFL's all-decade teams of the 80s and 90s and a Super Bowl champion with the Green Bay Packers.
Reggie's coming again. Reggie White. Yep. Reggie White's going to take over this game right now. Now watch right there. Boom! Reggie said there's a game to be won. I don't know how much gas I have left in this tank, but whatever it is, I'm going to empty it out.
A lot.
And he emptied it today.
When I look at the best defensive player that ever played the game, I don't put myself number one. I'm looking at Reggie White as number one. And the one thing about Reggie, he was a religious person, and I could understand it. And when he lined up against you, everybody's praying, you praying that he don't hurt you, and he praying that he don't hurt you. So everybody's praying. Everybody praying.
Have you ever seen anything like his hump move?
No.
Have you ever seen anything like that? You take a 310-pound man and you do this and lift both feet
Off the ground.
Both of them.
And there's Reggie White. And that's that hump move. That's the one. He learned that from Howie Long. Here's the hump. You go up the field, get the right arm in, get him moving that way, and then go inside him. He just goes back and just boom.
I don't think people really realize how big Reggie was. So when Reggie got up under you, I'll never forget, my son was watching the Super Bowl, and Reggie put his hand and was pushing the guy with one hand. He was like, how is he doing that? I was like, you don't realize.
Because he's pushing you with one hand, because he's doing this with the other one.
I'm not messing with you. No, Reggie was so dominant, man. And then for me, John Randall, his quickness in that first step, I would have adored to play behind that first step. I don't know if you can name another person that plays like John Randall.
Tasmanian Devil.
Oh, my gosh.
He was. It was never stopped. Never.
Regulators, mount up. We're coming. I'm here. I'm ready to rock.
Well, before we throw to break, I want to get your thoughts on these three guys.
Well, Bruce Smith was a great edge rusher. Tremendous quickness off the ball. Won a lot with his first step. And then if the tackle was off balance, then he could power him or come back underneath. Randall had a great first step as an inside rusher, which made him even more dangerous because he could go inside or outside of the guard or run through the guard. Reggie is in a class by himself. We recruited him at Cleveland in free agency. Didn't have much of a chance. But he was a special guy. He really was.
You know what? Reggie White,
guy.
in some ways, when free agency came around, everybody said that the free agents would only go to LA or New York or Miami. And he was one of the first ones ever to sign. And when he went to Green Bay,
Oh, boy.
it shook up everything.
Everything.
It was stunning.
Wow.
And Holmgren tells a great story about how Reggie White said he was going to listen to God to make his decision on where to go. And so Mike Holmgren, after hearing that, called Reggie White, left a message on his machine saying, "Hey, Reggie, this is God. I want you to go to Green Bay." And hung up the phone. Coach, you're first up right now with Bill Hewitt, a Michigan man and one of the game's first Ironmen. He played end on both offense and defense and was named the NFL's all-decade team of the 30s. We got footage on this, huh?
We do. Bill was a little undersized, but fast and tough, kind of like all those Michigan guys are.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Okay, this is 56 up at the top, no helmet, right next to Musso. He's not wearing a helmet either. And you could see his blocking here. He was, again, a little bit undersized, very quick off the ball, helmet or no helmet. Bill Hewitt is a tough football player. That's easy to see. You'll see him stand out on defense. So he's at the top of the screen. He'll come flying into your screen right there. And very fast off the edge. He was a defensive end that was not used much in coverage, but he was a strong pass rusher and was very willing to take on blockers in the running game.
You can always tell which one he is. He's the guy without the helmet.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And all day tough.
We know that you love the Colts teams of the 1960s, so I'm sure you're excited right now, Bill, to hear this next name. Defensive end Gino Marchetti, a World War II vet who fought in the Battle of the Bulge. Marchetti was named to 11 Pro Bowls and helped lead the Colts to 2 NFL championships.
Gino was tall, 6'4", 6'5", 250, ran well, and really could dominate the line of scrimmage in both the running game and the passing game. So
it was amazing. When you watch this, you'll see. I don't know which highlights you're going to play, but there are plays you go, how did quarterbacks ever survive in this game?
there is the top of the screen against Greg, Forrest Gregg, and really the standout player on this Colts defense. This is a good example right here down to the bottom. Marchetti, starting to rush up the field. You can see the Lions trying to double team him, and then Gino coming underneath to make the sack, make the play. And one of the great things about Gino, growing up in the Annapolis area was, these guys all had their restaurants, and so it was Gino's restaurant. Everybody goes to Gino's to get the Gino sandwich. Everybody goes to Gino's.
Got a new spokesperson. That's awesome.
We are now 6 wide at our desk. Rich Eisen here, along with Chris Collinsworth, head coach Bill Belichick, Ray Lewis, Lawrence Taylor, and the latest member to be introduced right here in person, none other than, hello, sir, Mean Joe Green of the Pittsburgh Steelers Steel Curtain Defense. I feel like at the NFL Films I should say that like John Facenda, the Steel Curtain Defense. Green played 13 seasons in Pittsburgh, voted to 10 Pro Bowls. He was the NFL's Defensive Player of the Year in 1972 and 1974 and led the Steelers to 4 Super Bowl wins. Good to see you here at NFL Films, sir.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm in good company at last.
No, you are. It is good. It is good to see you here. What does it mean to be part of a team with Mean Joe Green?
My grandfather used to have me sitting down and understanding that nobody goes into Pittsburgh and wins. Me sitting next to Mean Joe Green, me sitting next to LT, the forefathers of what nastiness means. Oh, it is what it is. You can smile it off now.
Why are you laughing at that?
Because he know why he laughing. All that pain he put out on people, why you laughing?
Chris will tell you, he saw me many times from a distance.
A long distance.
I mean, I was one of the nicest guys out there. You know that.
You're one of the nicest guys that nobody ever wanted to play against. I mean, you had, and you'll back me up on this, you had, obviously the ability to destroy people straight ahead. Mm-hmm. But his first step quickness and ability, you put on some tape of this guy.
Yeah.
Tackles for losses were just a part of playing Pittsburgh, and it was him.
Yeah.
We used to say, as great as Lambert was, don't worry about Lambert. Get Joe, and we got to take our chances on Jack.
Well, see, I knew how to fall down in the hole and plug it up with my body.
Joe, the Coke commercial that you did was one of the all-time greats.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that was so touching.
Mr. Green?
Yeah.
Want my Coke? It's okay, you can have it.
Okay.
Tell us about that.
Well, Coach, we were there, for 2 days.
Wait, so Coke said
You
to
forgot your line?
It was just.
All you had to say was, here, catch.
No, okay. I didn't get to that part. You got a product here, Coca-Cola, and you're supposed to like it, right?
Yeah.
I'm drinking it, and they got a can for me to spit it out. And I was so naive, I swallowed it. I swallowed 18 bottles of that stuff.
Oh, my God. How many times did you belch after that?
And that's what happened. When it was time to roll the tape, I kept belching.
So that was
That's
your
why
line.
it took. Is that why it took 2 days?
That's why I took. That's why
Are
I
you
took 2 days.
serious? That's
Yeah.
why.
How could you not be? You drank the whole thing.
Yeah.
Hey, kid.
All right, cut.
And then we got a little kid about that tall, and they got me. He's white and I'm black. And he wants to help me. And then when they roll the music, have a Coke and a smile. Even for you, LT, you tear up a little bit. See, we touched the heart of a hard man, so we'll get everybody.
But all you had to say was, here, catch.
Listen to that. See? See?
Yeah. That's all you had to say.
Ray. Okay. I coached a lot of guys. They ain't something like him. They hear nothing I said. Nothing I said. Listen to him.
Oh, my God.
Golly. So, Coach, what did you do like that? You talk to a guy all day, and he ain't hearing you. How do you get to him?
Coach, you've seen great defenses. You guys had great defenses, right? You guys had great defenses. I mean, legendary defenses. But that Pittsburgh run of a decade of that defense was about as sustained a group of excellence as I've ever seen.
Yeah, from front to back. Linebackers are unbelievable. Front was incredible. It was hard to make a first down. Forget about scoring. It was just hard to make a first down.
Every time I stepped in Pittsburgh, honestly, the only reason I was not afraid is because I said, guess who watching me?
Your grandfather.
Me. Stop playing.
That's important. That's important. That really is. That really is. Coach, what he's saying is that we were together long enough to follow instructions and get the same instructions from the same person. I was with Mayor Blunt 12 years.
Wow.
Jack Lambert for 10 years.
Wow.
Terry for 12. So we're together.
Yeah.
We're together, and we're hearing the same message over and over and over. And that was what was the problem with your group.
We had a lot of problems.
But they were the changes. But see, Coach has been able to get that done with different faces. Somebody's carrying that message that he's delivering, people that he depend on and count on.
I think you want to try to bring as many people into your organization that just inherently believe that. As I've always said, players win games.
Let's introduce a couple more members of the front seven of the NFL 100 all-time team. Deacon Jones, the man who created the term sack. 14th round selection in 1961. He would play 14 seasons in the NFL. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in 67 and 68, and he was on the NFL's 75th anniversary team. Also alongside him in the Fearsome Foursome, defensive tackle Merlin Olsen, voted to 14 straight Pro Bowls, named to both the NFL All-Decade teams of the 60s and 70s. They're both members of this team. And just hearing the name Deacon evoked some reaction from all of you guys.
He wore number 75. That's kind of why I wore 75. The head slap rip. I borrowed that from Deacon, and that was very important in terms of how I played rush the passer. Maryland was a very, very bright guy.
Very, yes.
I watched him. He played by formations. What are the possibilities? And the position of the fullback or the halfback would tell him that.
Mm-hmm. Well, your Coke commercial probably played in all those Little House on the Prairie shows, too. Let's move on. A couple of Cowboys now added to our monument wall here. From America's team, it's Mr. Cowboy. Defensive tackle Bob Lilly is on the NFL 100 team. Lilly was the Cowboys' first ever draft choice in 1961 and played 14 seasons in Big D. He was voted to the NFL All-Decade teams of the 60s and 70s. Defensive tackle Randy White is on this team. He also played 14 seasons in Dallas. His nickname was the Manster, for half man, half monster. He missed only one game in 14 seasons and was co-MVP of Super Bowl number 12. You have any thoughts on these guys, Bill?
Well, I mean, how would you like to have Bob Lilly and then when he retires, follow it with Randy White? You know, that's a pretty good group. Lilly was very quick, had a great instinctiveness. And then, you know, Randy White played defensive end at Maryland, then was drafted by the Cowboys. I think it was the second overall pick. They tried a middle linebacker. Yeah. Then they moved him to defensive tackle. You know, it was really a defensive end, middle linebacker. I mean, enough athleticism to play all those positions, which is pretty unusual.
He's joined on the all-time team by defensive end Leroy Selman, the first overall pick in the 1976 draft. Selman was voted to 6 straight Pro Bowls and was the 1979 NFL Defensive Player of the Year. And then we've got one of the Purple People Eaters, defensive tackle Alan Page, who's named the NFL's Defensive Player of the Year in 1971. You get the drift. There's a lot of Defensive Players of the Year that we're mentioning in this show. He helped lead the Vikings to 4 Super Bowls and was the first defensive player ever named Most Valuable Player of the NFL. And obviously Lawrence Taylor would follow up years later on that. What do you think of when you hear those names, Mean Joe?
Well, Leroy, I recall him at Tampa. They played a 3-man front. Leroy was, to me, the best 30 defensive end of all. He could also do the 4-3.
Second that.
What I recall Ted doing is dropping into coverage and and really stretching the middle of that field. You couldn't get a ball over the top of him. I mean, he could get to the deep middle and he could get to the ashes.
Before we break, do you have anything on Alan Page you want to make mention here, Bill?
Unblockable, a little bit like Randall.
Yeah, that's a great comparison. Yes. It really is.
Super quick and a little bit longer. I mean, he was unblockable.